Get out of our schools, God. Get out of our books, God. Get out of our schools. Get out of our academia, God. Go away, God. Get out of our magazines, God. Get out of our newspapers, God. Get out of the news, God. We don't want you, God. Go away, God.
Jeez, man, harsh. Poor God. Alright, so who are you? What is your worldview, creation or evolutionism? Well, that's a beautiful name, but it's a bit of a mouthful. I'm not going to say that the whole video, so let's see. I got some Kent Hovind posters there in the background. I think I have a pretty good idea what's coming. So how about I call you... What was that noise? People can't get in here. It's not like I have a door people can just walk straight in, at least without talking their way past, this guy. Hey, Tentacle Monster, this is a little bit awkward after all this time, but what am I supposed to call you? Right, I knew that. Without talking their way past... Huh, there's a tiny shaman in my house. That's odd. Hey, little buddy, how'd you get past the tentacles?
Discount Hovind is mine.
No, I'm pretty sure that's mine. I just came up with it all by myself. I said it before you came in. Everyone heard it.
No, I mean, Discount Hovind. It's my series. You're currently stepping in my territory.
So to be clear, you're telling me that you just snuck into hell and broke into my house, and I'm in your territory. And get your ass back to the Shire.
Okay, I mean, I guess you've got a point.
Or I could just call in some hellhounds and have you taken out of here. I assume. I don't know. I've never called security here before, but I assume it's something cool like that.
Or, we could do something other than having me eviscerated for trespassing.
Yeah, okay. I guess it'll do me some good to have some company for once. Maybe, I guess. You want to help me debunk this guy I just found? Pretty sure nobody's ever done it before.
Oh, well, of course. I mean, I'm 6 episodes deep into my series on this guy anyways. I guess this'll just be episode 7.
Taking credit for other people's discoveries. Typical Hobbit.
What video are we checking out anyway?
It's called The 7 C's of History.
Oh, Discount Hovind's gonna educate us on history? Excellent. I needed a laugh today.
So not only did you break into my house, you also brought your intro.
Yeah. It generally attacks people too, but I guess it's feeling kinda shy today.
Hey guys, what's up? How you all doing? I'm sorry, and I'm sorry again that I haven't done a video in a very long time.
Oh no, it's fine. You can take a few years break. Your channel's got plenty of content for me to bust through to have episodes upon episodes based on you, man.
Wow, you alright, little fella? Be careful, you might have a bit of an obsession starting there. It doesn't seem healthy to spend so much time debunking one guy.
Alright, Mr. Hello, I'm a Scientist.
Shh.
Don't...
This video is not all about me, like how things went. No, how things go, Josiah. I know it's not really about me, but if you really want to know, I've been traveling a lot. I've been getting a lot of new jobs. I've been meeting a lot of new people. I've hooked up with a lot of modeling agencies and acting agencies, and pretty much I'm even gotten a job cleaning buildings and such and such.
Congratulations. Sounds like the modeling agency's been working out great. Got you all the best janitorial gigs.
I'm still crossing my fingers that he'll debut in the next PureFlix film.
Oh, just like everyone else, I'm busy with a lot of certain things. By the way, I'm really thankful and I'm really excited that Kent Hovind is soon to be released from prison sometime maybe this February. I'm not sure. I don't want to jump to conclusions, but I'm just saying that's what I've heard.
Oh, he's out. Don't you worry about that. He's out, and he's discovered the internet to boot. Much to my chagrin.
Mine too. Means I'll keep getting requests to debunk him for years. But at least maybe they'll stop in like 50 years when he's long gone, so I guess I can look forward to someday never having to make another Hovind debunk. Possibly after I'm also dead of old age, but at least it'll stop someday.
But then you'll have to do Eric.
No, Apologia's already dealing with Eric.
And that leaves me with this guy?
That's right. How you feeling about your life choices?
Yeah, no, don't make me answer that honestly.
Ah, you've become a real YouTuber.
I think it's a real relief that finally he gets to get out after all such an innocent man who has kept his constitutional rights and constitutional laws has been locked up for no other reason for the fact that, Big Brother wants to shut him up,
No.
Even Big Brother enjoys a good comedy sometimes.
For the fact that evolution, it's a dangerous theory and it leads to all sorts of social ills, and there's no evidence to back it up whatsoever, and it has nothing to do with science whatsoever.
I wonder, Discount Hovind, have you ever caught a cold? You know why we haven't been able to cure it? The virus evolves. It's not really that hard to understand.
You know, dude, as much as I'd love to talk about whether evolution is or is not scientific for like the 10,000th time, I thought this was supposed to be a list of C's about history. Where are my C's, Theophilus?
The 7 C's of history is what I want to talk about.
Oh, good.
That's what I mean by how things went. What's the history of the universe in accordance till now? I would like to talk about our origins. Now, the fact is, our origins are not a side issue. They are an important issue. They are vital to our understanding, because what you believe determines how you behave, whether you like it or not.
I see. So then is creationism the reason your idol Kent Hovind is into child abuse and genocide?
I said, son, I told you to sit still. You did not sit still. What happens when you disobey Daddy? He said, you get a spanking. I said, that's correct. Bend over. And boy, did I give him a spanking. It was a doozy. A few minutes later, the smoke is rising off his hind end, and the tears are coming down his cheeks, and the pearls are coming out of his nostrils. I mean, the whole thing. I said, now listen, son, we're going to go back in the dentist office, and you're going to sit in that chair. And if you wiggle one time, I'm not going to yell at you. I'm just calmly going to take you back out to the van and give you 2 spankings like you just got. And then we're going to go back in the dentist office, and if you wiggle, I'm going to bring you back out and give you 3 spankings in a row like you just got. And we're going to go back and forth all day until I get tired. And I played tennis for years, son. I have an excellent forehand smash, as you well know. I don't think I'll get tired for a while. You know, the difference, when he was in the dentist chair the second time, he was still scared of the dentist. That had not changed. But something had changed. Now, he was more scared of me. Great psychological difference. He's more scared of me than anything in the world. That's the way I wanted it.
This is something that almost no Christian that you talk to seems to understand about how our criminal justice system is completely unbiblical. Now, I've studied the Bible, and I made a list of 11 crimes that should be punishable by death today, according to the Bible. Why don't you throw a few at me, and then I'll see if I can complete the list of crimes that you think today should be punishable by death, according to the Bible.
Cursing your father or mother, verse 17, punishable by death. Causing someone to have an abortion, in verse 22 and 23 of that chapter, is punishable by death. I think the biologists are going to go crazy over this one and crucify me, but I think there must be something like a mean gene, something in the genetic code that makes animals vicious or mean. But I think there is something in the genetic code that deals with the disposition toward gentleness or meanness. And I think in God's perfect law, if we would continually execute people that do see certain crimes, we would gradually get a much better society that not so many people have this mean gene in them.
So you mentioned murder, kidnapping, you mentioned smiting or cursing your parents. What about where the Bible says that adulterers should be put to death, homosexuals, or those who commit bestiality and things like that?
Absolutely, yes. And witchcraft. Those, according to the Bible, are death sentences.
Now, if that bothers you, what I say about the fact that God created this world and the world is only 6,000 years old, hey, as much as the world is round, the earth is young.
Compared to the rest of the universe, sure, it's young. But let's be real here. At 4.4 billion years, she still ain't no spring chicken. But I think she's still looking fine. I mean, check out those curves. 6,000 years, though? That's not just young, bro, that's jailbait. So it's lucky for us globeheads there's no solid evidence she is that young, and the evidence to the contrary is a whole lot better than a driver's license. Which means it's totally legal if I do this. Oh, yeah. Just, give me a minute.
Dude, really?
Stay out of my business, dwarf!
If that bothers you, I'm sorry. Call me Bubba, call me Hey You, call me Jojo, and let's get back to the story. Let's get back to the subject.
Why call you Bubba when we already have the perfect name? Discount Hovind.
Real funny stolen joke, though, Jojo.
If you don't like my degree, then call me Kent or Bubba, and let's get back to the topic.
If you were going to take one of Kent's jokes and pretend it's your own, you could have at least taken one that's actually funny and makes sense. He has at least one of those. But this is what you decided to plagiarize. Are you one of these Pendletons who just takes all of Kent's jokes, regardless of their quality?
Okay, but he said, let's get back to the subject. 2 minutes into the video, and he hasn't even introduced the subject yet. What gives?
Now, the fact is, the 7 C's of history starts with creation, and corruption, catastrophe, confusion, then Christ, cross, and consummation.
Sweet, we've got a topic now. Let's dig in.
You seem way more excited than you should be. Personally, I'm suddenly much less excited. Before I was expecting some dumb history, now I'm just expecting a sermon. Probably one copied straight off the end of one of Kent's lectures.
And what are all these all about? Well, going through them one by one, creation. The earth was created, everything was perfect, and there was mostly land and a little bit of water, and there was mostly water in subterranean water chambers. And the fact is, there was no such thing as clouds, there was no such thing as rain before the flood. The water came up under the earth to, like, water the whole ground.
Okay, so in order for me to accept that, I have to be under the assumption that water never ever evaporated once in the whole history of the world before one couple ate a fruit. That somehow human sin led to the water cycle. You know, the water cycle we know of today, where water evaporates in the clouds and then rains back down. I'm not sure if I or anyone else would buy that. Eventually, in this proposed world, all water would become unusable in time due to the water cycle not being able to filter any of the water on the planet. Evaporation and condensation are key factors in water purification, and you're proposing a world that lacks this. You don't really think this through, do you? Not to mention, where in the Bible does it mention that it didn't rain? I'm fairly certain that you're just pulling that out of your ass. Or rather, based on your particular style of hero worship, you found it somewhere in Kent Hovind or Ken Ham's ass. That out of the way, let's tackle this article.
Before the fall, not everything was vegetarian, and people try to say, oh, you're really insane to believe that lions and bears were all vegetarian. Well, some of them are still vegetarian today. There was even an article in Creation magazine about a lion that would not eat meat, that refused to eat meat. And here's the Creation magazine that contains that very subject. Right at the bottom it says, the lion that never ate meat. It actually has this article, the lion that wouldn't eat meat. So a long history and a long article about the lion that was vegetarian. This is not a mutated animal. This is just a catchback to the original creation. All animals were like this.
All the animals were like what? Captive and fed a specialized diet by humans? Here's the article so people can see it more clearly. And as you can see, it says, Little Tyke continued to do extremely well on a daily diet of cooked grain, raw eggs, and milk. The cooked part of cooked grain is really important because that cat would have had serious problems eating raw grain. The article also mentions the lion eating grass, which cats certainly do, but cats can't digest grass. It makes them throw up, which aside from its laxative qualities is exactly why they eat it, to get rid of other stuff they can't digest, which is worse in their digestive tract. Now, despite the information about this lion apparently only existing as an anecdotal account in some random's book, which was copied into creationist magazines and websites that accept it uncritically as fact just because it suits their agenda, I really wouldn't be all that surprised if you could keep a captive lion alive on the food that the article claims they did. In the wild, cats, including lions, absolutely would need meat to survive, but if you have a captive lion with some sort of problem with meat, then instead of just letting it die, you could feed it the right alternatives in the right quantities to give it the nutrients it needs, like, for example, taurine is a very well-known one. The type of milk isn't specified, but it does say that the lion lived with sheep, and sheep's milk contains significantly higher amounts of taurine than cow milk. So if that's what they were using, even better. If anyone knows more details about what's needed to keep a lion alive and whether a diet anything like this is even feasible, leave a comment about it. I'm no expert on lion nutrition, so I'm just going to be charitable here and accept that the story might be true. The article also says the owners worked on refining the lion's diet, even going as far as to give her rubber boots to chew on to keep her teeth and gums in shape. Again, something not available in the wild. And that's the big problem here, because I have no doubt that an obligate carnivore with problems eating meat can technically survive on a special human-created meatless diet. You could make any animal survive without eating its natural diet if you deliver the right nutrients some other way. But if you take this animal out of captivity and put it in the wild, it's simply gonna die. It doesn't have access to even the most basic nutrients it needs to live if it doesn't eat meat. And the article even says as much in a note. It seems unlikely that eggs, or milk for adult animals, were part of the pre-fall diet. The point to note here is that lions do not need meat to survive. Oh really? So what were the lions eating before the fall then? Eggs and milk that weren't part of the pre-fall diet, and grains they couldn't cook and veggies they couldn't digest? No, in the absence of a sufficient alternative nutrient source like sheep's milk or eggs, lions absolutely need meat, and you've just set up the pre-fall environment as lacking those alternatives. Of course, this is really all beside the point, because even the existence of a truly vegetarian lion wandering around the African savanna grazing among the gazelles wouldn't mean the fall happened.
Just because you have sharp teeth doesn't mean you're a meat eater. It just means you have sharp teeth.
Actually, no. Sharp teeth like that mean that you eat meat. Your teeth are an indicator of what type of food you're supposed to be chewing. Sharp teeth are for tearing flesh, flat teeth are for grinding plants. Humans are omnivores because we have both sharp teeth and flat teeth. Compare us to something like a cat that doesn't have any of those flat teeth, and look at their diets. They are predominantly meat eaters. Now look at animals that eat predominantly plants. They have flat teeth. This is not a coincidence. It is part of evolution. But that's something that you seem to deny for some strange reason. Just so you're aware, evolution doesn't exactly threaten your religion. The fact that you are threatened by real science means the fragility of your belief is incredibly telling.
And perhaps a lot of vegetables before the flood got even bigger, so perhaps the T-Rex or tigers or lions needed those sharp teeth to eat such hard vegetables.
How would having sharp teeth make it easier to eat those vegetables? Bigger, harder veggies would just make the sharp teeth that much less useful. I guess they'd be kind of good at putting nice round holes in them, but for actually snapping pieces off and crunching and grinding them to actually swallow them? No, what a pain. This is why you don't tend to bite through a carrot with your canine teeth. You tend to use your premolars. And it's why herbivores tend to have flat incisors and molars, while carnivores tend to have mouths full of sharp teeth.
Creation totally 100% upheld by God's power. People would try to say, oh, couldn't Adam have stepped on an ant or anything? No, that wasn't possible at all, because in a world that was completely held up totally by God's sustaining power, would not have had any destruction or any mistakes or any accidents whatsoever.
Oh, so the fall of man wasn't destruction or a mistake or an accident. Nothing went wrong, it all went totally right.
No, that was part of the plan. The perfect plan. The perfect plan created by the perfect God that somehow failed and got ruined. You know, that plan.
I mean, think of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego that were thrown in the furnace because they refused to bow down to an idol, and they were alive in that hot furnace that would have just boiled you alive or turned you to vapor instantaneously. Or when the Israelites were marching in the desert for 40 years, none of their sandals fell apart.
But that was way after the fall. Are you telling me people and sandals didn't die even then? When did death start then?
It's the reason why a lot of Christians, as of now, have survived gunshots, or guns don't go off when they're being shot at in a lot of third world countries, or a lot of countries that we don't have any idea of what's going on.
Okay, so for one, let's address this thing about the guns. Can a gun jam on its own? If so, then the fact that the gun jammed when shooting at somebody who professes to be a Christian isn't that special. Happens all the time. If your claim was really true, then I would assume that any Christian that goes in and professes in one of these violent areas wouldn't have a gun go off and shoot them. Except those guns do shoot them. Moreover, we haven't really been able to find any real evidence that the Exodus actually happened, so you can make the assertion that it did, and we can pretend that their shoes never fell apart, but let's say that the Exodus did happen. Do you, know what the more likely scenario is? That the account of it written in the Bible found the idea of them having to repair shoes so unimportant to the narrative that it was just not included. Speaking of narratives, throwing a couple of believers into a burning furnace and having them not burn alive is part of the narrative that the Bible's trying to get across. The mere fact that the Bible states that there were people who didn't burn alive doesn't automatically make it true.
And animals and people got to live over 900 years. You could learn a lot in 900 years.
What does that have to do with vegetarian lions and immortal sandals? You're drifting all over the place.
Plus, who knows what kind of IQ Adam had? He came pre-programmed straight from the hand of God. He could walk, talk, name the animals, and get married all first day. Probably had an IQ of 4,000 or 5,000, I don't know, way out there someplace.
Walking, talking, naming the animals, and getting married aren't exactly 5,000 IQ skills, dude. Sure, if it was a newborn baby, it'd be pretty amazing, but Adam didn't start as a newborn baby, did he? So I'm not sure why you think I'm going to be blown away by him being able to walk. Dooming the entire human race after being told what had happened, though, now that's some high IQ shit.
Had a photographic memory. I do too, but I ran out of film years ago.
Speaking of IQ, you know what makes you come off as real lacking in that department? Copying Kent Hovind word for word, jokes and all, and then pretending like you're speaking your own thoughts.
Adam was pre-programmed straight from the hand of God. He could walk, talk, name all the animals, and get married first day. Probably had an IQ of 4,000 or 5,000, I don't know, way up there someplace. Had a photographic memory. I do too, but I ran out of film years ago. Oh.
My little witch doctor home invader here is right. You are just a discount Hovind. Even steeper discount than John Pendleton. Actually, no, I take that back. You're not even discounted. You're secondhand. John Pendleton's like you went out and bought a heavily used and kind of broken Kent Hovind at Goodwill, and you're like Kent Hovind from the Goodwill outlet store where the stuff nobody wanted to buy in the actual Goodwill that's all busted and covered in feces gets sold off by the pound.
But the reason why a lot of plants and animals and people got to live over 900 years is because there was a seventh layer or a canopy of water, ice, vapor, I don't know. Water comes in 3 flavors, and actually was able to shield the Earth's atmosphere and shield from a lot of UV light or harmful X-rays or gamma rays from the sun. They're very harmful on your corpse.
Wow, that's goth as hell. I don't want to go outside. The UV rays will harm my corpse.
And that's the reason why a lot of people would get wrinkly. And the fact is, concrete would help, block a lot of UV light as well. I've been living in this house for a long time, and various parts of it are actually made of concrete. And in a lot of ways, I'm actually 22 right now, but a lot of people still say I still look 17 or still look 20 or that kind of stuff. Maybe it's a compliment, maybe it's not that much of a compliment, but...
So you're telling me your skin has been slightly preserved by never leaving your concrete house because you don't get exposed to UV light that way. It doesn't matter if your house is concrete or not, right? If you have opaque walls and a roof, you're not being exposed to UV radiation from the sun. It's possible that by avoiding the sun like a vampire, you are keeping your skin a little bit younger, sure, although you're only 22. I looked pretty young at 22 as well, and now look at me. I gotta iron my pantyhose face every single day, and you can still see the wrinkles before I CGI them out in post. I'm not real interested in how you look at 22. I want to see how you look at 42. Anyway, in the Kent Hovind speech you're copying this all from, he wasn't talking about concrete blocking UV rays, he was talking about it blocking the X-rays that are coming through the atmosphere all the time and blowing you full of holes constantly, because you don't live under a thick-ass concrete roof, which at least makes a little more sense. Or it would if the atmosphere didn't absorb basically 100% of the X-rays from the sun, making it a completely stupid claim.
We're getting X-rayed by the sun right now. The sun's X-rays are coming right through that roof, right through your body, and blowing you full of holes inside the building. Except on cloudy days, because water stops X-rays. And concrete stops X-rays, but this roof does not stop X-rays. And your skin feels the full force of those X-rays. You're getting blasted with millions of holes all day long, every day of your life.
Dude, there's a little gap in your curtain. Close it quick. The UV's gonna get you. You'll never get a modeling job again.
I like that sort of way. So there's a lot of scientific observations here and there to show that the pre-atmospheric, the pre-flood world was a lot different than what we see today.
So the fact that enough mass will block X-rays is somehow evidence that the pre-flood world was different? How? Let's hear your initial assertion once more just to make sure we understand.
The reason why a lot of plants and animals and people got to live over 900 years is because there was a 7th layer or a canopy of water, ice, vapor, I don't know. Water comes in 3 flavors, and actually was able to shield the Earth's atmosphere and shield from a lot of UV light or harmful X-rays or gamma rays from the sun.
Oh yeah, by the way, the sun doesn't normally emit gamma rays, but solar flares can do it, and those are absorbed by the atmosphere too, so you don't have to worry about those either. So I guess your reasoning goes something like, you've just assumed that people lived to 900 years old before the flood because they weren't exposed to X-rays or gamma or UV, so therefore the pre-flood world must have been shielded from UV and X-rays. And considering this shield was a thick sphere of ice or water surrounding the whole Earth and blocking the sunlight, I assume they lived huddled together in the darkness trying to fight off the cold. So okay, it's great that you assert this, but there's zero evidence for any of that. Not that anyone actually lived to 900 years old, or that being heavily shielded from solar radiation will let you live to 900 years old. But we can certainly test that last bit. Just take a person, or if that's an ethical issue, then a rat, and put them in a heavily radiation-shielded room for their entire life. If they live many times longer than the average lifespan, then your claim is supported. And if they don't, it's stupid and we throw it in the garbage. Anyone want to place a bet on the outcome? Of course, considering there's no evidence of 900-year-old humans in the first place, it's kinda silly to speculate at all about why they might live that long. The only people walking around with that kind of age are us reptoids, but I don't think you mean to say we're who the Bible was talking about.
I'm suddenly feeling much less comfortable. Rep, what now?
Don't worry about it. We don't disassemble people anymore. Except if they expose the whole fake sun thing. Don't do that.
Why do I not feel reassured?
Shh. Everything's fine. Just focus on the video.
You know, what we see today is a junkyard compared to what Adam and Eve saw. What if the whole world had hyperbaric conditions before the flood came? Talking about the hyperbaric oxygen chamber where a person can go in and they close it and they triple atmospheric pressure and 3 times more oxygen, you know, and after someone gets out, you know, old man gets out of there and he feels like running around the world. Your hemoglobin gets oxygen saturated, which means you could run for hundreds of miles without getting tired.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna have to call bullshit on that. Oversaturated oxygen levels are actually kind of a bad thing. Conservative oxygen therapy has been proven in a lot of tests to actually be more beneficial than liberal oxygen therapy. And what you're talking about here would be an environment akin to a liberal oxygen therapy environment. An environment that is so rich and dense in oxygen that it would have produced skin irritation, nasal dryness, and oxygen toxicity, and maybe even lead to the suppression of breathing. These are all side effects that can occur with oxygen therapy now, and that's when we can regulate it. If the environment was nothing but this, then you would see these results in spades. Yes, environments from, say, the Precambrian area were a little more oxygen-rich than the environments we have now, but life on this planet has evolved to adapt to the present oxygen levels, and it took a very long time to evolve to get to that point. If humans existed in their present state, and were dropped into these environments that you're claiming we were in, we would be very ill-suited for survival.
People would try to say, why do we dig up their cities? Well, if you lived in a world with perfect weather, and you were healthy, you don't need a house, just go sleep on the grass.
I've slept on grass in great weather before. It's really not all it's cracked up to be, especially when you wake up with a spider on your face. And being in an oxygen-rich environment wouldn't automatically mean you wouldn't die of exposure by sleeping out in the open every night. The presence of more oxygen doesn't just magically make the nights stop being cold. In fact, with this massive amount of ice or water between the sun and the earth, it'd be harder to warm up the surface, so it'd probably be way colder than it is now. If you really feel the need to make an excuse for why we don't find evidence of their shelters, you could have just said they preferred caves or something. At least that'd sound more plausible.
Perhaps didn't need cars, so they were able to run incredibly fast speeds, and like people got so tall and that a lot of amazing human skeletons found that are like 3 or 4 times the size of ordinary skeletons.
Look, I get that your 900-year-old zillion IQ masterminds with so much learning under their belts didn't invent cars, and I wouldn't expect to find them. But it's not because just being tall and fit makes cars useless to a person. You said that an old man who comes out of a hyperbaric oxygen chamber feels like running around the world, but that doesn't mean he can actually run around the world, especially not in a reasonable amount of time. No, not even if he's 4 times bigger than a normal man. Again, an oxygen-rich environment is not magic. It doesn't suddenly make technology useless to you. It doesn't make you Superman. It doesn't turn you into the Flash. Even if humans were able to run without ever getting tired and stopping, which wouldn't be the case even in the pre-flood scenario, they'd still get places faster in a car. But we're getting down the road into Fantasyland again, because the real question is, are there actually giant human skeletons around? And you didn't bring up any specific examples, so I can't respond directly to any, but the ones I've seen are either not very good Photoshop jobs, or otherwise just long since debunked as hoaxes. If there's something fresher and more compelling out there, I'd love to see it. Like, does some creation museum somewhere have an actual skeleton? Or have all the actual skeletons just conveniently vanished?
There's a lot of scientific observations and evidences that we are descended from giants, not primitives. Like, there's no evidence for that. All that evidence for supposed, chimpanzee-like creature, ape-like creature to man is just based on a whole history of lies and fallacies and forced information and forged information.
And fossils that you can actually look at and which can actually be studied. But no, you're right. These weak-ass Photoshops are way more compelling than that.
And a lot of forged evidence, none of it real.
There certainly have been fossil forgeries before, and how do we know that? Because they were exposed as forgeries by scientists who accept evolution. And yet still you go on and on about how those forgeries discredit science, while simultaneously going on and on about how the forged pictures of giant skeletons some jackass made in 20 minutes in a computer, without ever producing any physical object, forged or not, are 100% real. Those you accept unquestioningly because they make you feel good about your beliefs. What a joke.
But it still remains in the textbooks. I just want to actually get to a lot of these scientific textbooks and public schools that still endorse them, try to say, hey, this textbook's not accurate, okay? It talks about the gill slits and the whale having a vestigial pelvis or us having a vestigial tailbone. None of that is true. All those things are needed.
Just because something still has a small use doesn't mean that it's not also vestigial. Something being vestigial only means that it's much smaller than it originally was. You know, like a tailbone or the hip bones from a whale. It just so happens that in many of these cases, these vestigial pieces are also useless. Also, there isn't any evidence for us descending from giants. In fact, one of our closest genetic ancestors is the bonobo. Really, one of the biggest differences between us and any other primate is that we lucked out on a fusion of chromosome 2. That's really one of the biggest key factors that help differentiate us from other primates of that era. Have you ever taken notice to the fact that if you try to explain the phenotype of what constitutes an ape, then you invariably explain the phenotype of a human? You end up explaining the same damn thing. There's a reason for that, and a damn good one. You're an ape. You never stopped being an ape. The only thing that you've demonstrated in this video so far is that there may have been some merit to Aristotle's ladder.
What are you talking about?
Aristotle's ladder, the debunked evolutionary model that said that things get better as they evolve in some kind of hierarchy, as opposed to just adapting to their environments. The joke is that Discount Hovind might be the only example we have of a lesser evolved being.
Oh, that joke wasn't funny before you explained it, and it's even less funny now that you did. Nerd.
Well, damn, why'd you invite me to your house if you're just gonna make fun of me?
I didn't invite you in. I'm not even sure how you got here. I'll make fun of you however much I want.
Oh, wow, would you look at the time? We've got a video to respond to still.
And the fact is, if we ever lost a tail, that would be the opposite of evolution. You know, a man lost it because he didn't need it. Have you ever thought how handy a tail would be? You ever come to the door with 2 sacks of groceries? I mean, you could open that thing right up and walk right in there.
That's the exact same joke Kent made in my last video about him. I didn't know I was being suckered into making another episode of that series. If I felt like responding to Kent today, I would have just done it and got a little bit closer to the end of the nightmare.
Lost it because we didn't need it. That's a lie, okay?
Just go watch my latest Hovind episode. I think it's number 12. I don't really feel the need to waste my breath going over this again.
I'll waste mine then. You've been talking way too much anyway. Evolution doesn't care about what's useful. In reality, all that matters for biological evolution is what helps a species reproduce. If that tail didn't help reproduction, in either, say, helping attract a mate, or by aiding in survival of some kind, then it would more than likely be selected out over time. Typically, animals that have better adapted to their environment make it to the age of reproduction. Evolution isn't some magic genie that says that something is or isn't useful and then either removes it or gives it to you based on what it thinks is useful or neat. It's just a matter of selection pressure. If there wasn't a selection pressure to maintain having a tail, then that tail could become vestigial over time. It's almost like you've never actually read anything about evolution, and you've done all of your studying by watching Kent Hovind videos.
At the creation, everything was perfect. Everything lived in harmony, and the fact is, God created Adam and Eve full grown, and the garden was full grown. God did not put 2 babies in the middle of the garden and give them a bag of seeds and here, plant these quick. Everything was totally grown and fully mature. Adam and Eve had all the genes stored up, in fact. They had all the genes of the world stored up, and God gave them a choice to choose between right and wrong. That's why he created like the tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil.
Well, then your God didn't understand jack all about psychology. It's pretty common knowledge that if you tell yourself not to do something repeatedly, eventually you're gonna cave in. That type of negative reinforcement doesn't actually aid in tailoring behavior against what you're trying to tailor it against. Now, if there were some shot collars or something involved, then maybe. But that's probably a little too kinky for God. If God honestly didn't want them to eat from those trees, then not putting them in the middle of the garden for them to see every single day would have probably been the most logical way for them to not eat from those trees. But by placing them in plain view every day and negatively reinforcing them to not eat from those trees, if we assume that your God in the story is real, then he all but guaranteed that Adam and Eve would eat from the trees they're not supposed to.
It's almost like God's written is kind of a dick.
I mean, yeah. And that's not even mentioning the spooky, scary torture and fire pit that you'll go to if you don't love him enough.
He said, if you eat off that tree, you shall surely die. Spiritually, and they eventually did die physically. Because everything before the flood was so healthy and so perfect. I mean, they would have lived forever if they didn't sin at all. But almost 1,000 years. Living over 900 years. That's amazing. And then there's corruption. The devil said, if you eat off that tree, ye shall be as gods. Because of that, sin came into the world, and now we're living in a junkyard. We're living in a fallen world, in a destroyed world, a physically and spiritually destroyed world. And so there's so many cults and so many religions today that say you can become a god. Even the theory of evolution. Man is the god.
Evolution does not say humans are gods. Please, find me a scientific book or a study related to evolution that says anything like man is a god. And I don't mean creationist propaganda meant to demonize evolutionists as self-worshipping megalomaniacs. I mean something written by someone who accepts evolution. You're not going to find it, because we're not the ones saying evolution means humans are gods. Creationists are the ones saying that, while also saying evolution means humans are worthless animals and it doesn't matter if we kill each other. I'm not sure how you make those two things fit together, but hey, it's your idea. You deal with it.
And so that's why it's one of those, it's still religious, and it's still a false god in religion. Of course, people would try to say, skeptics would try to say, oh, snakes don't talk. How could the snake, you guys believe in talking snakes? Of course snakes don't talk. The fact is, Satan exists and his demons exist, and Satan was the one who inhabited the snake or turned himself into a snake, and that's why he was able to talk. It can be dangerous to always look for a natural explanation for clearly supernatural events.
Can you name me one event in the history of our world that was clearly supernatural? An event that we can verify did, in fact, happen?
Yeah, Bilbo here found his way into hell where I shoot my videos. I'd be willing to accept a natural explanation for that, but one doesn't seem to be forthcoming.
A portal.
A portal.
Yes, I used a portal.
A natural portal?
Yes!
Well, why didn't you just say so? We have those things all over the place.
That's weird.
Is it, though?
Yes.
Whatever, dude. Just make sure you use that portal to leave after we're done.
Oh, I plan to. Pizza's been on its way for a little bit now, and I'm getting kinda hungry.
Then I kinda wish you'd come half an hour later and brought the pizza with you. I'm working up a hell of an appetite going through this nonsense.
Of course snakes don't talk, and there's even archaeological evidence that snakes used to have legs.
Yes, and do you know what those legs would be called, as the snakes were late in the process of getting less leggy and no longer using whatever leg bits they might have had left? Vestigial.
Just that moment when God said to the serpent, that's it, fella, you gotta crawl on your belly for the rest of your life.
To the poor snake that got unwillingly possessed by the devil and did nothing wrong, not to mention every one of its descendants forever. Yeah, that sounds like your God's morality.
I don't think all the legs just went poof and disappeared just like that. I think over time, they gradually all disappeared. They gradually disappeared or, like, lost those legs, or, like, over time and such.
And what's the word for that process?
Oh, I know. Is it evolution?
No, what? It's delegification. It's alright, I wouldn't expect a hobbit to know science.
Because, hey, there's archaeological evidence for snakes with arms, and that's pretty impressive.
You keep using that word, archaeological. I do not think it means what you think it means. But yeah, it is impressive that there are snake fossils with 4 limbs, isn't it? Because that confirms the prediction that if snakes evolved from lizards, i.e. tetrapod reptiles, their ancestors would have had legs. Another point to evolution.
Things are getting worse, not better. And that's not the way life gets along. And natural selection and survival of the fittest, you know, the strong trampling the weak, that's abusive to teach any child.
And telling them that if they don't believe in and love Jesus in a very particular way, they're gonna burn in hell for all eternity isn't somehow abusive? Moreover, survival of the fittest is a figure of speech. It doesn't actually mean the strongest survive. It means that those that are better adapted to their environment have a higher tendency to survive. But we've already gone over that early in the video. It's not something that you've actually researched. And if you have, you haven't researched it honestly.
The fact is, this world is groaning and travailing in pain, and it needs a savior for the fact that we need to survive, and we need to get better for certain things. You know, like we need life. We can't achieve it on our own. We need help from God and all those kind of things.
Considering that according to your story, God's the one who did all this to us in the first place, I don't see why you'd look to him for help. Luckily though, the world's just not as bad as you wish it was, and humans can in some way help to make it a little bit better for each other, especially if you keep your religion out of our way.
I mean, it's all you hear about in the news and media and magazines nowadays. Go away, God. We don't want you, God. Get out of our schools, God. Get out of our books, God. Get out of our schools. Get out of our academia, God. Go away, God. Get out of our magazines, God. Get out of our newspapers, God. Get out of the news, God. We don't want you, God. Go away, God.
Nobody's saying that to God. If they're saying it to anyone, it's to the authoritarian Christians who try to interfere with everyone else's lives. But apparently you can't tell the difference between yourself and God. If they're talking to you, you think they're talking to God. And yet we're the ones deifying ourselves?
Katrina hits. God, where are you? Where'd you go?
No, that was just you morons again. Oh God, why did you do this to us? What did we do wrong? Please come and help us. Where are you? The rest of the people affected didn't waste time with that. They just kind of dealt with it.
Oh, so this is just no atheists in foxholes then, right? That overused notion that people don't want God until the going gets tough and they suddenly turn to God every time. I hate to break it to you, but there are several people who've gone through horrifying circumstances and haven't magically turned to God to help them in their time of need. I know it's a hard realization that some people don't have to turn to a deity when the going gets tough, and some people can turn to their family members, close friends, loved ones, communities. They've got all kinds of options. This imperative that people in their situation have to automatically turn to God is honestly really gross and infuriating to listen to. This is completely ignoring the fact that in almost all these situations, like, say, a natural disaster, if your God was really omnipotent, then it would logically follow that he caused that hurricane or that disaster. And if not caused, then he blatantly allowed it to happen. Do you not see the problem here? Who am I kidding? Of course you don't. You're just perfectly content in that Ray comfort zone.
Just think of the fallacy in a lot of people's thinking these days.
Calling out fallacious thinking is great and all, but you are really not the right person for that job.
They ask God to leave. God just simply gives up his hands and says, okay. But if this happens, if I leave, my sustaining power, you ask for it, that can be gone.
And just like that, you're gone. Poof. With all the fallacies that you claim everyone else has. So what's the takeaway here? Well, as per usual, Discount Hovind has shown that he's not exactly got the mental faculties required to form a cogent point. If he does, then he simply avoids using them because that's what his hero and savior Kent Hovind does. It's honestly really sad, and I'm starting to think that the series is turning into a bit of a character study on Josiah. A very sad, depressing character study.
Man, is Discount Hovind ever a good nickname for this guy. He's nearly indistinguishable, right down to taking the words straight out of Kent's mouth half the time. I'm sure I didn't catch every instance of him directly ripping off Kent's speeches either. It was kind of painful to listen to, but I guess kind of funny in some ways too. Anyway, audience, if you're watching this on my channel, then go ahead and follow this weird hobbit thing back home through his portal, and check out his channel and grab a slice of pizza. I assume he has a name. What's your name, fella?
It was Suris.
Smeagol, right. And speaking of the portal...
Yeah, I'm going. I can smell the pizza from here. Try to keep the reptoids from biting me on the way out, eh?
I promise nothing. Farewell, tiny critter, whatever your name may be. Drink a half pint for me when you get home. So what'd you guys think of the video? I'm really awful at collabs, so I almost never do them. This is kind of a trial run. Let me know in the comment section below if you liked it, and give the video a like if you want to, and subscribe if you haven't already.
Well, that was fun. Honestly, I'm surprised that Logicked even agreed to the collaboration. I'm certainly happy about the end result, though. That said, I hope you guys have enjoyed this 7th edition of the Discount Hovind series. If by some strange satanic miracle you haven't actually subscribed to Logicked already, then please go ahead and follow my link in the description to do so. He did a huge chunk of the editing for the video, and honestly, I can't thank him enough. With that said, leave a like, do all that fun stuff, share it with your friends if you haven't already. If you have the wherewithal, watch it again on his channel so you can get ad revenue as well. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and insert end of video tagline here.